Emily Morgan stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, seated at the sleek marble kitchen island of their suburban home. Morning light filtered through the windows, bouncing off polished surfaces. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Across from her, Daniel adjusted his tie with the same calm precision he used for everything. "Meeting's early today," he said without looking up. Emily smiled and nodded, but her eyes followed him closely. Something in his voice felt off, too clipped, too careful. He kissed her cheek quickly before grabbing his briefcase. The moment the door shut, her smile faded. Lately, Daniel had been working longer hours, staying late, hiding his phone. Emily wanted to believe it was nothing. But in her gut, something twisted. She opened the shared bank app on her phone. Still the same balances. But it wasn't about what was there. It was what wasn't. Her instincts weren't wrong before. And this time, they were screaming. Emily sat on the edge of the bed that night, the quiet hum of the ceiling fan masking the silence between them. Daniel had come home late again. "The meeting ran over," he said, loosening his tie. He dropped his briefcase on the chair like always. She watched him from behind, the sharp angles of his back tense beneath his shirt. "You've been working late a lot," she said softly. Daniel turned slightly, his expression unreadable. "Yeah, Q4E's brutal," he replied. Then he kissed her forehead and disappeared into the bathroom. She remained on the bed, staring at the briefcase. Her fingers twitched with temptation. She hated the thought. But trust wasn't a feeling anymore. It was a decision she had to make every night. And tonight, it felt heavier than ever. Later that night, after Daniel fell asleep, Emily crept downstairs. The soft creak of the floor echoed louder than she liked. She moved like a ghost, silent, careful. Her hands shook as she opened his home office door. Inside, the space smelled like cedar and printer toner. His laptop sat in the center of the desk, glowing faintly. She hesitated, but then her fingers moved on their own. She opened the lid, and the login screen lit up. She entered the password, his usual birthday combo. Access denied. A chill ran through her. She tried again. Another failure. That wasn't like him. Daniel was predictable. Or he had been. She stared at the screen, heart thudding. Why would he change the password? The next morning, Emily sat in her car in the driveway long after Daniel had left. Her hand hovered over her phone. She scrolled through contact names until she found one she hadn't touched in years. Claire. Her best friend, once. A forensic accountant now. She hadn't wanted to involve anyone. But this didn't feel small anymore. Emily tapped the call button, then hung up. She took a deep breath. Then she dialed again. When Claire answered, Emily's voice cracked. "Can you help me find something? It's about Daniel. I think he's hiding money." A pause. Then Claire said, "I'm listening." That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay beside Daniel, eyes open, staring at the ceiling as he breathed peacefully beside her. Her mind spun with 1,000 questions. Was it an affair? A secret investment? Something worse? Claire had agreed to look into it, but the waiting gnawed at her. Every minute stretched like hours. Every movement from Daniel felt rehearsed now. When he shifted and placed a hand gently over hers, she didn't move, didn't breathe. She wondered how long she'd been lying next to a stranger, and how much longer she could keep pretending not to know. Claire's voice echoed through Emily's earbuds as she sat in the corner booth of a quiet cafe. "I checked the surface-level records, nothing too strange, but when I followed the transfer metadata, something came up." Emily gripped her coffee cup. "What kind of something?" Claire hesitated. "A recurring wire, weekly, small enough not to trigger alerts, sent to a bank I've never seen on his regular portfolio." Emily's stomach dropped. Claire continued, "The bank is offshore. He's been doing it for over 6 months." The clink of a spoon on porcelain jolted Emily back to her surroundings. All the noise in the cafe seemed too loud now, too sharp. She blinked. Her perfect life was unraveling, transaction by transaction. "What now?" she whispered. Claire replied, "Now we find out who owns that account. And why he's hiding it." That night, Emily sat on the living room couch with her laptop open, screen casting a pale glow across her anxious face. Daniel was in the shower. The house echoed with the sound of running water, a muffled barrier between them. She clicked through every PDF, every document Claire had sent. The names on the transactions meant nothing to her, but the pattern was clear. Controlled. Hidden. Intentional. A fake consulting expense. A phony vendor payment. A shell company. It was all there. She felt sick. The man she married, the man who promised her transparency and partnership, was orchestrating something in the shadows. The bathroom light flicked off upstairs. Emily snapped the laptop shut and tossed it behind a pillow. She smiled faintly as Daniel walked down the stairs. "Everything okay?" he asked. Emily nodded. "Just browsing." The next morning, Emily dropped Daniel off at work. He leaned in for a goodbye kiss, but she turned slightly, letting it land on her cheek. "I'll be home late again," he said, not noticing. She watched him walk into his building, clean-cut, confident, composed. As soon as he disappeared behind the glass doors, Emily pulled out her phone. Claire had texted an address. Storage unit, registered under a business name Daniel created last year. Emily drove there, hands trembling. The lot was quiet. A keypad, a red door, and a single fluorescent light. Her breath fogged the air. The code worked. The door creaked open slowly. Inside, a few boxes, a locked filing cabinet, and a small black safe bolted to the floor. She knelt down, heart pounding. Why would he need this? Emily pried open one of the boxes, her hands shaking. Old receipts. Stacks of bank slips. Foreign exchange forms. A passport copy, not his. Names she didn't recognize. Places she'd never heard of. And then, at the bottom, a torn envelope. Inside it, a photo of Daniel standing with a woman and a young boy. Not a work photo, this was personal. The kind of candid shot taken by someone close. Daniel's arm around the woman. Smiling. Relaxed. Emily staggered back. The picture trembling in her grip. Her mind raced to connect the dots. Offshore accounts. Shell companies. Safe houses. And now this. Her voice cracked in the silence. "Who are you, Daniel?" The question hung there unanswered. Emily didn't go home right away. Instead, she parked in a grocery store lot, tears dried stiff on her cheeks. Claire was already waiting. "You okay?" she asked gently. Emily handed her the photo and documents. "You were right. There's more. I think he's living another life." Claire leafed through the paperwork. "This isn't just hiding money. This is deception on a criminal level. He's covering tracks, transfers, identities, maybe even citizenship records." Emily felt her pulse throb in her temples. "Do I go to the police?" Claire shook her head. "Not yet. You need more. The second you accuse him without enough proof, he'll vanish. Men like him don't hesitate." Emily looked out the windshield. The sun was setting. So was her old life. That weekend, Daniel left for a supposed corporate retreat in Seattle. Emily watched his car disappear from the driveway, then turned back into the house with fire in her veins. Claire was already inside, laptop open, sleeves rolled up. "Ready?" she asked. Emily nodded. They dove into his files, unpaid invoices, investment schemes, and shell account routing numbers. Each new folder peeled back another layer of lies. "Look at this," Claire said, tapping the screen. "He wired $50,000 last month, to a woman in Marseille." Emily's hands clenched at her sides. "That's not just another account. That's someone he's taking care of." The weight of betrayal felt heavier than ever. Emily stood still for a long moment. "We're not just dealing with secrecy. This is strategy. He's been planning this life for years." Emily found herself scrolling through Daniel's old photo backups, deep into the archives, into folders she'd never touched before. Most were standard: vacations, holidays, work events. But one folder was labeled with a date that meant nothing to her. She clicked. Inside were pictures of the same woman from the photo in the storage unit, standing beside Daniel on cobblestone streets, holding hands, laughing. In some frames, the boy was with them. The intimacy was undeniable. Emily leaned back, nausea rising. These weren't quick flings. This was another life, full of memories and affection. Her thumb hovered over the delete button but didn't press it. Not yet. She needed these. Proof, not just for her sanity but for whatever legal storm was coming. Claire traced the transfer patterns and followed a digital trail that led to an encrypted cloud drive. It was locked, but she'd cracked tougher ones. "He's sloppy," she muttered. Emily watched nervously. After several tense minutes, the folder opened. Inside, scans of passports, bank statements, legal documents, multiple aliases, including Daniel's name under different variations. "He's building escape routes," Claire said. "Multiple identities. He could vanish in a week, and no one would trace it." Emily's voice shook. "He planned to leave me." Claire nodded grimly. "He still might." Emily stared at the screen, a storm rising in her chest. Love didn't just die, it was smothered. And Daniel had brought the pillow. That night, Emily couldn't stop replaying it all. The woman, the child, the offshore accounts, the lies buried in plain sight. She stood at the kitchen sink, staring out into the dark backyard. Daniel had once planted a dogwood tree for her birthday. Now, it looked like a grave marker. Her phone buzzed. A new email, new device login detected. Location, Geneva. Her breath caught. She checked the timestamp. 20 minutes ago. Daniel wasn't in Seattle. He was in Switzerland. He was already moving money. Or himself. She backed away from the counter, the phone shaking in her hands. Everything was in motion now, and she was already one step behind. "He's running," she whispered. "He's already running." Emily met Claire again the next morning, this time in a quiet park. She handed over a manila folder containing everything: bank records, photos, identity scans. Claire flipped through, nodding. "You have enough for a full forensic report. This isn't just infidelity. This is fraud, identity manipulation, and potential money laundering." Emily felt her fingers tighten around her coffee cup. "What if I expose him? What happens then?" Claire answered plainly, "He loses everything. His business, his reputation, maybe even his freedom." Emily looked at the rising sun slicing through the tree branches. "Wait." Her breath steadied. "Then it's time," she said. "He started this double life. I'm going to finish it." Daniel returned on a Tuesday. Emily was waiting in the living room, her arms folded tightly. He stepped through the door, suitcase in hand, smile too wide. "Miss me?" he asked. She didn't answer. "Where were you?" she said. He blinked. "Seattle. I told you." She tossed her phone onto the coffee table. The screen showed the Geneva login, alert. Daniel's smile faded. "Emily, I can explain." "Don't," she cut in, voice sharp and cold. "I know about the account. I know about Marseille. I know about the woman." His shoulders dropped as if deflating. "It's not what you think." Her eyes narrowed. "Then tell me what it is." He opened his mouth, then closed it. She waited. The silence was louder than anything he could have said. For the first time, Daniel looked small. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table, in complete silence. Daniel finally spoke. "It started as a business partnership. Then things got complicated." Emily didn't flinch. "You had a child with her." He looked up sharply. "No, he's not mine. But you've been sending money, visiting." His voice dropped. "She was in trouble. I was helping." Emily shook her head slowly. "You built a life, not just a lie." Daniel leaned forward. "I never stopped loving you, but you did stop telling the truth," she snapped. his face contorted, somewhere between shame and defense. The man who once held her dreams in his hands now sat there, hollow and cornered. Her voice cracked. You broke us, Daniel. Not with her, with every choice you made without me. That night, Emily found herself alone in their bedroom, packing a bag. Not to leave, but just to breathe. She needed space, clarity, quiet. Daniel watched from the doorway. Where are you going? He asked. To Claire's, she said. I need time. You're running away, he replied. She turned, meeting his eyes. No, I'm pausing before I implode. He stepped forward. Let me fix this. She shook her head. You had years to fix it, Daniel. I have days before it destroys me. The silence stretched. Finally, she zipped the suitcase, shouldered it, and walked past him. For once he didn't try to stop her. He simply stood there, a statue in the ruins of his own deception. At Claire's apartment, the weight finally cracked Emily's composure. She sat on the edge of a guest bed, hands shaking, tears finally falling. Claire sat beside her without speaking. The silence felt sacred. I feel like such a fool, Emily whispered. I believed in him more than I believed in myself. Claire reached for her hand. That's not foolish, that's love, but now, it's survival. Emily nodded, blinking away another tear. How do I move forward with someone I no longer recognize? Claire said, you don't. You move forward with yourself. You survived betrayal. Now you choose what comes next. And in that moment, amidst the sorrow, Emily felt the first tremor of something unfamiliar. Strength. Emily returned home the next afternoon, not to reconcile, but to reclaim. She walked through the door with a folder in her hands, copies of everything. She handed them to Daniel, who stood in the living room with guarded eyes. What's this? He asked. Evidence. In case you decide to disappear, she replied. You've got layers of lies. I've got backups for all of them. His jaw tensed. You're threatening me? No, she said coldly. I'm warning you. She walked upstairs without another word. From that point forward, Emily no longer waited to be told the truth. She demanded it, or found it herself. The line between them was drawn, not in anger, but in absolute clarity. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not of the secrets. Not of him. Not of what came next. Emily sat with Claire at a downtown law office, the air stiff with formality and fluorescent lighting. Across the table, a female attorney in her 40s scanned the documents silently. After a long pause, she looked up. What you've assembled is enough to open a case. Civil at minimum, possibly criminal if we trace the offshore trail properly. Emily's throat tightened. What happens if I file? The lawyer replied, he'll be served. His assets could be frozen. But you need to understand, this won't just affect him. It'll drag everything into public record. Emily stared at the manila folder in front of her. This wasn't just about marriage anymore. It was about justice. She took a slow breath. He made this public the moment he started living 2 lives. I'm ready. Back at home, Emily moved methodically. She began taking photographs of every valuable asset, paintings, electronics, jewelry. She photographed serial numbers, receipts, and insurance forms. Each image was uploaded to a secure drive. Claire stood nearby, arms folded. You sure you want to do this alone? Emily nodded. I need to. I don't want him accusing me of being emotional. I want facts. Her voice had changed, not frantic, but steady, purposeful. Every item she documented was a brick in the wall she was building between her past and her future. The house no longer felt like home. It felt like evidence. And she no longer felt like a wife. She felt like a witness gathering proof for the prosecution. Daniel noticed the shift immediately. Emily no longer asked about his day. She no longer waited up for him. Her silences were sharp, her gaze measured. One evening, he stopped her in the hallway. Are you trying to punish me? He asked. She looked at him calmly. No. I'm protecting myself. He stepped closer. We can fix this, Emily. You can't fix a lie with flowers, she replied. You fix it with truth. And yours ran out. For a moment his confident mask cracked. He looked like a man who realized his control was slipping. Emily stepped around him without another word. In the old version of their marriage, she would hesitated. In this version, she walked forward and never looked back. A week later, the documents were filed. The papers were served. Daniel didn't argue. He signed them with shaking hands, eyes dark with disbelief. Emily watched from across the room. He looked less like the man who built their home, and more like a stranger stripped bare. "So that's it?" he asked. Emily nodded. "That's it." There was no shouting, no tears, just the cold bureaucratic end to something once warm and vibrant. He stood, walked out of the room, and shut the door behind him without a word. Emily remained still. She hadn't just ended a marriage. She had exhumed a life buried under secrets, and chosen to walk away from the wreckage with her eyes open. That night, Emily sat alone at the kitchen table, sipping tea from a chipped mug she used to hate. She stared out the window, at the still backyard, untouched and eerily calm. The silence felt different now, no longer empty, but full of clarity. Claire's voice echoed in her head, "You don't rebuild from the ashes of someone else's truth, you build from your own." Emily reached for her notebook, flipping to a clean page. At the top, she wrote one word: start. Not an ending, not a middle, just a beginning, one she would shape on her terms, with no illusions. The storm had passed. Now came the quiet. And in that quiet, she found herself. Emily stared at the letter on her doorstep. No return address, just her name in Daniel's handwriting. Inside was a handwritten note. "You've made your point. I'm staying out of your way. But I hope someday you'll understand why I did it." Enclosed were copies of foreign documents, accounts she hadn't found, names she didn't recognize, and one address in Barcelona. She handed it to Claire. "He's still hiding something," Claire said. Emily nodded. "This isn't closure. It's bait. He wants to control the ending too." Claire placed the papers on the table and said, "Then don't let him. Control it yourself." Emily leaned back, eyes heavy but focused. Daniel may have ended their marriage, but he didn't get to write the final chapter. She would. Emily boarded a flight 2 days later. Destination: Barcelona. Alone. No explanations. No plan beyond finding answers. The city greeted her with sun-drenched streets and whispers of a world Daniel had kept hidden. She checked into a modest boutique hotel and walked to the address from the documents. It was an apartment above a bookstore. Quiet, unassuming. She stood across the street, watching the window. After an hour, a woman stepped onto the small balcony. Same woman from the photos? She looked older now. Tired. Real. Want. Emily didn't cross the street. She didn't need confrontation. She needed understanding. She turned and walked away, heart pounding, carrying nothing but truth and her name. Emily returned to her hotel and sat by the window, journal in hand. She didn't write about Daniel. She didn't even write about betrayal. She wrote about herself, about the silence she once mistook for peace, about the instincts she buried, and about the way she lost her reflection in someone else's story. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like a woman reacting. She felt like a woman creating. Her pen moved quickly, untethered by fear or doubt. The truth hadn't set her free, it had unmade her. And now she had to remake herself piece by piece. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be hers. Back home, Emily resumed her life, but it no longer fit the same way. The rooms felt too quiet, the air too still. But she didn't try to fill the silence anymore. She made space for it. She renovated the guest room into a home office. She donated Daniel's clothes. She replaced their wedding portrait with a canvas she painted herself. Abstract, chaotic, alive. When friends asked how she was doing, she said, "I'm becoming." It wasn't just healing. It was rebuilding with intention. What she lost had been real. But what she was making now was realer. Not perfect, but honest. Months later, Emily received a voicemail from Daniel. He sounded tired, not angry. I hope you're okay. I'm sorry for everything. I lost sight of who I was and what we were. She didn't return the call. Not out of spite, but because closure didn't require a conversation. She stood on the deck that evening, sipping wine as the sky turned gold. The past still lived inside her, but no longer controlled her. Daniel had created shadows. She had found the light. She didn't need to erase the pain. She only needed to outgrow it. And in the quiet hum of dusk, with the wind brushing her skin, she finally did. Emily walked into the county courthouse on a rainy Monday morning. The same building where she had changed her name, signed her marriage license, and now filed for the final judgment. The clerk called her name, and she stepped forward, handing over the last stack of paperwork. Divorce decree? The clerk asked gently. Emily nodded. Yes, final. There was no tremble in her voice. No second guessing. Just completion. As she stepped back into the rain, umbrella tucked beneath her arm, the weight didn't vanish. But it did shift. What once felt like grief now felt like release. She had survived deception, endured silence, and reclaimed her voice. The rain soaked her shoulders, but she smiled anyway. She was still standing. Emily sat across from a young woman at a cafe, her laptop open to a budgeting spreadsheet. Start by separating joint and personal accounts, she advised. Even if you trust them, keep your own safety net. The young woman nodded, scribbling notes. How do you know all this? She asked. Emily smiled faintly. Ariance. It wasn't just about money. It was about agency. About making sure no one else could erase your stability behind your back. In helping someone else reclaim control, Emily realized how far she had come. She no longer walked into rooms afraid of what she didn't know. Now she entered armed with everything she'd learned. Knowledge didn't just protect, it empowered. At home, Emily pulled a worn shoebox from her closet. Inside were remnants of the past, photos, love notes, the keys to the storage unit. She sat cross-legged on the floor and sifted through them, not with anger, but with distance. These things once held power. Now, they were just artifacts. She placed them back in the box, sealed it, and labeled it closed. Then she slid it into the attic, not to forget, but to archive. Healing didn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It meant remembering without reliving. And as she stood, dusting her hands, she felt lighter. She didn't carry the pain anymore. She shelved it. Later that week, Emily hosted a dinner for a few close friends. Laughter bounced off the walls, music played softly, and wine glasses clinked in shared toasts. It wasn't extravagant, just real. For the first time in years, her home felt alive. Not curated. Not careful. Just honest. One friend leaned in and said, "You look like yourself again." Emily smiled. "That's because I am." Her past hadn't broken her. It revealed her. The betrayal that once defined her had become the fire that forged her new life. And as candles flickered and conversation flowed, she realized this wasn't the end of a chapter. It was the beginning of a whole new book, with her name on the cover. The camera fades in on Emily, walking along a tree-lined street at sunrise, journal in one hand, coffee in the other. Her pace is steady, gaze forward. She stops by a bookstore window, that bookstore. In the reflection, she sees not what was lost, but what was gained, clarity, strength, and the certainty of who she is. The voice of the narrator echoes softly. She once believed truth lived in promises. Now, she knows it lives in action, and she's not waiting to be saved anymore. She's saving herself. Emily turns from the window and walks forward, disappearing into the golden light of morning. A new day begins.